Good evening, everybody. How about that music? Isn't that real music? And what about a luau in Idaho? I've never even imagined such a thing. So, thank you so much, Dr. Bird and Pamela Bird. What an evening, what a day, what a place. And we W.A.S.P are thrilled to be here. We thank you all for coming. And I must say that the outpouring of this community, I call you a family because that's exactly what you are. You're a big family. And thank you from our hearts. It is my privilege tonight to introduce you to our W.A.S.P group who have come this many miles to be with you tonight. And the first one is going to be Betty Blake. And Betty Blake has the distinction of being in the first class, 43-1. Betty, come to the mic. Please.
And I was there when Pearl Harbor happened. And I watched it happen from our house up on a hill. And I went to work at Pearl Harbor the next day because they had a lot of secretaries and everything there, and they were wives of military personnel, and they started to ship them out the next day back to the mainland. So they were very short, and I knew how to type, so I had a job right away. But the first time I went to work, a couple of days after Pearl Harbor, I drove out to Pearl Harbor, and there I saw the Arizona, the California, and then Utah all sunk with just their masts sticking out of the water. It was a really frightening sight. And that isn't in my notes at all. I don't know. I got to look at I'm losing eyesight, so I'm...
Hey, Betty, tell
yes.
her about Cornelia Ford.
A good friend of mine, Cornelia Ford, was in the islands. She was a pilot. She was an instructor over there, and I met her before the war. And then when I married a Navy ensign whose ship was sunk at Pearl Harbor, the California. He was sent back to a new cruiser in Philadelphia. I'd never been east of San Francisco, and it was quite a surprise to get to New York City. Wow, what a surprise. But Cornelia called me from I was in Philadelphia, and she called me from Wilmington, Delaware, and she said, get the heck down here as fast as you can. They're starting a women's flying service in the Air Force, and want you to sign up. So I went down there, and I didn't have enough hours. I had 500 hours, and you had to have more than that to get in, so they turned me down. I was so disappointed, I went back to Erie, Pennsylvania, or Philadelphia, where I was, and didn't know what I was going to do. The war had started, I couldn't go back to Honolulu, and I didn't know what I was going to do, and I got a call from Jackie Cochran, and she had heard about this first group, and Jackie stepped right into it. She was a driver, and she called me in Philadelphia and said, get the heck down here to Houston. I'm starting a group of women. And I already had my commercial license and flight instructor's license, but I got on a plane and sailed down to Houston, Texas, and went through the first group down there.
Good.
And I wish somebody could read my notes, because I can't even read my notes.
Can I say one? I think Betty what I meant for her to tell you about Cornelia Ford was the woman in the movie Tora, Tora, Tora,
Yeah.
who is up flying that morning of December 7th, 1941. And she was teaching a male pilot. She was an instructor. And Betty knew Cornelia at that point. And Betty had to, she saw a plane command a collision course. And so she had to take controls from the student, went down through strafing bullets of a Japanese Zero, and made it into the airport hangar, luckily. But Betty went the next day and tell them what you saw to see her airplane, remember?
Oh, that was up in California.
No, in Hawaii.
She didn't crash in Hawaii.
No, in Hawaii when the Japanese Zero came after her, then Betty went the next day to see her plane, and she had bullet holes in her wing tanks and one between her legs by the stick. and she made it into the hangar and lived. But she did end up being the first female pilot to die while in service to her country.
That wasn't me now, that was Cornelia's fault. No, I'm still breathing. I only have one lung because I smoked during the war. So I only have one lung, but I'm still breathing with the other one. And I've got macular degeneration and I can't see well, so I'm even using this and I still can't see my big print very well with this.
You don't need it. You don't need it.
But we had some really funny experiences. I was in the first class and we were an experiment. They called us the guinea pig class because we all had to have quite a bit of flying time to get into that first class, but they still weren't sure that women could learn to fly military aircraft. So they watched us like hawks, and a few of them washed out. But I was one of the lucky ones that did things right for a change. And I don't know what's the matter with me today. I think it was that wine or something that I had. I'll blame it on that anyway. But I'm sorry to have to do with this.
You're doing great, darling.
But I got in the Ferry Command. I was stationed in Long Beach, California, which was great because there were so many aircraft factories up and down the West Coast. And they were sending so many men overseas to fly. So every time they needed more pilots, then they checked us out in different airplanes. So we flew everything from all the fighters to the 4-engine 17s and 24s and everything. And they didn't do it because they liked us, they just needed pilots. So they were stuck with us. But I had funny experiences because they just really didn't know women were flying military planes. And I was flying a little Stinson up to Seattle one day, and I got stuck in California and couldn't get over the Siskiyous. There were 3 of us, and we were stuck in this little town, and we were there for about a week till the weather cleared, and we had our flight suits on. The 3 of us were just killing time. We bowled in the only bowling alley, and we saw the only movie in town. And so on a Sunday, we all had our flight suits on. We were walking around town looking at all the closed windows of the shops. We got back to our hotel. We were sharing a room. And we got back to the hotel, and the sheriff, we unlocked the door, and there's the sheriff with his gold badge on, sitting on one of our beds. And he said, "Hello, girls, how are you? You need to come down to my office." Well, I said, "What did we do? We're just walking around town looking at closed shop windows." And he said, "I'll tell you when we get down to my office." We showed him our IDs and everything, didn't mean a thing. So we went down to his office, and I found out later from him that some wife of a pilot that was stationed at a base there had been driving to church that Sunday morning and had seen us walking around town looking in windows, 3 of us in flight suits. And she called the sheriff and reported there's 3 women walking around town in men's flight suits. So we got there, and he didn't believe anything we told him. So we made him call Long Beach, which is where we were stationed, Long Beach, California. And it was a Sunday morning, and there was some kid on duty in Long Beach. And he asks them, and the kid says, "Never heard of them." The sheriff turned and looked at me like, "Aha, now what are you girls up to?" So we made him call back and talked to an officer that was on duty, and he verified that we were legitimate. So the sheriff apologized all over the place, took us back to our hotel. But we had some funny experiences like that because nobody knew women were flying military planes and wearing flight suits and things. But and I'm sorry to have to look at these notes.
She has many more stories.
Yeah. Dirty joke. You don't have to do dirty jokes tonight, do you? Formation PBY. Oh, that sounds good. We're near the water.
Yeah, Yeah, I flew formation with a PBY to Newark one day. And I couldn't stay with him very long. I was flying in a P-51. I had put my gear down and my flaps to slow down enough to stay with him, and it was over Louisiana. And I got to Newark, where I delivered the plane, and they took the wings off. They would take the wings off and put them on carriers and things and take them to England. And so anyway, I stayed. I had an aunt and uncle who lived in Newark. So I spent the night with them after I delivered the plane, and got on an airline and started home the next day. And I sat next to an officer in uniform sitting next to me on the plane, and he started telling me about this crazy girl that had tried to fly formation with him the day before. And he said she had bushy blonde hair, and anyway, I knew it was me he was talking about. But he was kind of a not too friendly guy, so I never told him it was me, so I don't know whether he recognized me or not. But we used to do things, we were flying like 3 times a week. I was ferrying planes from the factory in LA to Newark. And then they'd send you over to Rhode Island, and you'd get a P-47, another fighter, and they were going to the West Coast because they were going across the Pacific. Or sometimes they'd send you up to Niagara Falls, where P-39s and 63s were built, and they were going to the Russians. So we'd fly them from the factory up to Great Falls, Montana, but they wouldn't let the gals fly. They were delivered to the Russians in Alaska, but they wouldn't let us leave the country. They said they had no way to bed women down on the way to Alaska. So we had to leave them at Great Falls, Montana, and the pilots there would ferry them up to the Russians in Alaska. And then they would send you, you'd get there and you'd think you're going home, you've been gone a week or something, flying planes around, and they'd say, oh, and we're sending you down, there's a B-17 here that has to be flown down to Grand Isle, Nebraska. So wait till another pilot comes in and we fly that down to Grand Isle, and we get there at midnight, and they said, and we're tired, and they said, oh, we've got a B-26 that's got to go to Cheyenne. So at 12:30, we're getting in another plane and flying to Cheyenne, and then we had to sit there on the ground till noon in Cheyenne before there was an airline that would take us back. But you never knew. You just, you were tired about half the time, but it was very exciting, so we didn't complain.
And you were young and beautiful.
I was 24 then.
She had a date with Errol
20.
Flynn.
I had
Get him a date with Errol Flynn.
that was not a very good date. He hardly spoke to me. In fact, this was in Honolulu. I had the date with him. I'm from Hawaii. But he got up. We were at Trader Vic's for dinner. And 2 Navy pilots had taken me there to meet him. They knew him. And so I went to the ladies' room, and I come back, and the 2 Navy pilots have disappeared, and there's Errol, who's bored to death with me. And so we're sitting there, and I'm having a drink, and he's getting up and walking up and down the bar, hoping somebody will recognize him, and nobody recognized him. And then he took me home in a cab, and he never even got out of the cab or anything. He just said goodnight, and that was it. That was my date with Errol Flynn. But one day I was flying we were usually going east, and I had a 51, and I had just was on my way to St. Louis or someplace on the northern route, which we flew during the summer when it was cooler up there. Then in the winter we flew the southern route through Atlanta and everything because it was warmer and better weather. But we had those 2 routes across the country, usually going to Newark. But this one day, I don't know what I was going to tell you about that. Oh, I know. I'm losing it. But I turned on, after I left where I'd just taken off in Chicago or something, I turned on to the frequency that was just a national frequency that everybody was on. And we had to be in another frequency at the airports and everything to call in over the airports. So I got to the regular frequency, and I hear these guys talking back and forth, and I could still hear their voices. One said, "Hey, Joe." Oh, they started telling dirty jokes to each other. There were three of them flying in formation going east. And so I finally pushed my mic button. I was, probably 100 miles away, but I could hear them clearly, so I pushed the mic button and made a comment. It was dead silence. Then I heard one say, "Hey, Joe, that sounded like a gal's voice." And Joe comes back and he says, "Nah, how could a girl be on a military frequency, you know?" And then the third one comes in and makes some comment, and I let him talk back and forth for a few minutes. And then I called in and told them who I was, and they had no idea women were flying military planes, and they were so apologetic. And they were going to be back in Chicago the next day, so they invited me to turn around and come back to Chicago, and they'd buy me dinner and take me dancing and do everything to apologize. But I said, "No, I'm on my way to Newark. I can't turn around." But we had funny experiences like that, because they just didn't know any gals were flying military planes. It took them quite a while to figure it out. I'm sorry to have so much trouble with the notes here. Can't even read my big notes.
We don't care.
Sum it up? Oh, all right, that's enough. Okay. I told you. Anyway, I had a lot of fun, and I did a lot of flying afterwards, but that was quite an experience flying. I flew 4-engine, twin-engine, all the fighter planes. Whenever they ran out of men, they check us out in more planes. So we had a great time, and thank you.
There are very few women pilots. I think Jackie Cochran found 3,000, and most of them had little time. There was a CPT program going on at this time in the colleges around the country, and many of us were part of that program, where we learned to fly with an organized syllabus. The very first time flying was taught in an orderly way around the country. And the local operator supplied the instructors and the pilots, and the local college supplied the engineering professors to teach ground school. And many of us, I think over 400 of us, had that experience, and most of us received private pilot's license during that program. When Jackie Cochran started her program, this would be September of '42, she had over 25,000 women applicants for imagine that much interest in the country. At 1,830, I could go higher. At 1,830 were accepted, and 1,074 women finished the program at Houston and at Sweetwater, Texas. And the story is quite interesting. Congress voted the money for this program. However, in June of 1944, just after D-Day, when America was they were just so thrilled we were on the continent. They thought the war would be over. Hap Arnold was overseas with D-Day, and he wasn't there to support. Hap Arnold was the reason we were in the military. Jackie Cochran gave her story to him, and he approved it. He was a neat man. He was a great man. And he was not there when Congress to defend the W.A.S.P program, and Congress defeated the bill for our funding. And in other words, they said that the girls who were already accepted in the program could be allowed to finish. And so in December of '44, without any to do, the W.A.S.P were sent home. And perhaps this is the reason why the gold matters so much to us today. On the 10th of March, the W.A.S.P were awarded the Congressional Gold Medal. Because not only were we, beautiful at 25, but we now had beautiful granddaughters and children, and they were also invited to this program in Washington. So we're thrilled about that. That completed a circle, and it gave us a good feeling that had sort of rankled some of us, or most of us, some of us perhaps, because we were sent home without any Perhaps the Vietnam warriors felt the same way. Perhaps, I don't know. Anyway, to go back to our story and our introductions. Jackie Cochran set up the program in Houston, and we have someone here from Houston. Please stand up. I think it's Betty. Is she here?
I think Betty went back.
She went back. She's a class of 43-3, and she started in Houston. And then the program moved to Sweetwater, Texas. And we have someone from the class of 43-4, Jean Landis, who is with us tonight. And Jean, do you want to say a few words where you came from, how you happened to get in the program, and you're here today, and we love it. Class of 43-4.
Hospitality of Pam and Forrest Bird. And my home is in El Cajon, California, and I was graduating from San Diego State. It was Teachers College in those days, when an announcement was made that the CPT program, which Betty has just explained to you, was being offered. I'd always wanted to learn to fly, and this was my opportunity. So we were practicing for graduation in the women's gym, which is clear across campus. And the announcement was the first 20 people to arrive in the dean's office would be accepted in this CPT program. Well, I was in cap and gown and could hardly wait, and as soon as the graduation practice was over, I dashed out the back door, down a canyon, up the other side, and I was in the dean's office almost within 5 minutes, so I think I was the first one there, and was accepted into the program. So the first class was 35-hour in a little cub, and it ended with everyone receiving their pilot's private license. And the second program I was very fortunate to be in, and it was an aerobatic class, 35 hours, wonderful. Well, it was great. We flew a little Ryan ST, which was built in San Diego. And then I was lucky enough to get in the third class, which was the instructor's course, where I probably learned more than the other two. If you're trying to teach somebody something, you really get to the nitty-gritties. And so it was a wonderful class on the government, as Betty has explained, no expense to us. So that was just a wonderful experience. Then when I heard that there was a program being offered through I believe it was called Women's Aircraft, what was it?
Women's Flying Training Detachment.
Women's Training,
Flying Training.
Flight Training in Sweetwater, Texas. And it hadn't started in Sweetwater. I was assigned to report to Houston, Texas, as Betty has explained, which was, they didn't know what to do with this. They didn't have any barracks. They didn't know where they would house us. I think, weren't we in little motels all over town? And which was okay. We were just delighted to be there. So I started in Houston, and I was there watching first class graduation. So I saw you graduate in the first class from Houston. And by the third class, we flew our airplanes to Sweetwater, Texas, where our training continued. And at the end of that 6 months training, those of us who survived, and I'm thankful I did survive, received our wings, and then I was sent to Long Beach, California, where most of my flights were, again, because P-51 was being manufactured so close. I spent most of my time delivering P-51s to Newark, New Jersey, which is the greatest experience. So that's it in a nutshell.
Where are you from?
Oh, I was born in El Cajon, California, and after the war I went back to teaching for 40 years in health, physical education, and recreation, which I enjoyed very much. So I've had a good ride. I have no complaints. Yes, you have to, she's a good prompter. Yes, I spend 6 months up here in Idaho and Bonners Ferry, and 6 months in San Diego area, California, where I was born. And frankly, I like it up here much better than California. I really do.
Oh, where to begin?
All right.
You've heard most of it already.
Well, not your story.
Great, same thing. You know, you follow along, do what you have to do. Get buried out in some town. They take your airplane away. You have to take a bus home. It's cold, it's dark, you don't know where you are. But the rest of us great. We loved it. We had, and I heard a few rumors that there were men who weren't kind to us. I can't think of a single one.
Good girl.
Yeah, everyone, every single one. They were great. So now, I wonder if you don't have some questions. Somebody have a question?
The Widowmaker.
Yeah. The airplanes by then. So they were going to send me to fly a B-26. And the reputation of that airplane is one a day in Tampa Bay. Splat. So I thought, you're not going to put me in Tampa Bay. I don't care what they call you. And it was a great airplane. I loved it. So it's just a matter of, you get in there and do your best. Hope everything comes out right. And it usually does. If it doesn't, alternative. All I can say, it was one incredible experience. I'll never forget. I thank the U.S. government. We went, this is my last comment. We went in as, offering to go. We did what we could. And when it was over, we paid our own way home. We went home.
God bless Jay, the wonderful husband. And Skip has been over there every day. Both of these people have volunteered their services to you. This party is we're honoring the VIPs, which are of course the W.A.S.Ps, and also the other ladies in the military in World War II. But most of you are the museum volunteers. You are the VIPs. This museum would not happen without the VIP volunteers, and there's about 70 of them.
Wow, hooray!
Paul W.A.S.P. Paul's right up in front. Wave your hand, Paul. He's the leader of the pack and the volunteers.
Oh, they do all the work.
I want to thank the Spokane Review, the Bonner Daily Bee, Invic Construction, Mountain West, the Mountainside Electric, Ray Peck, and all the other names. You will see them listed tomorrow, so we appreciate it. And the last thing before we go back to our music for a few minutes is when they got their congressional medals in Washington, D.C., there was a party or a dinner in their honor. And that dinner was canceled 2 weeks out. So you know what? We know how to party in Idaho. Washington, thank you, Barbara Merritt and Nancy Darley and the other ladies. They have called every single living WASP. There's around 280. They have thanked them. They've spent hours. They've thanked them for the service to our beloved country. They knew they were, of course, invited, but we knew many of them, due to all kinds of situations at a specific young age, might not be able to come. But we thank them on behalf of the Northwest part of the United States, always. God bless each and every one of you, and thank you for coming, and let's party.